All right. Hi, everybody. So we're going to talk about what's new in iOS 15. So hopefully over the last couple of weeks, you maybe have seen the update available for iOS 15. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're not quite sure if you want to upgrade yet. So this is the kind of overview of all those changes, and hopefully we'll convince you to do it. We often find, that the first couple of weeks that an update is available, there's a lot of shifting going on, right? And so what you may have noticed is that your Fisher iPad or Fisher device wasn't allowing you to update right away to iOS 15. Maybe your phone, your personal phone that you use did. It allowed you to do it right away. But the college actually holds all major releases for a couple weeks. Basically, it allows us to test out all of our apps and existing softwares just to make sure that everything's compatible. And also, usually in the meantime, Apple releases at least a few different minor updates, and those will often fix some bugs that they find and report. So basically, it allows us to skip right to the most effective, most efficient usage, most effective, most efficient version of the software. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to share on my iPad. So I'm presenting to you from my computer, but you're going to see my iPad screen in just a second. And I'm going to walk you through some of the most common updates. I shouldn't say common, most interesting updates. So this list isn't all inclusive by any means. I'll be sure to, in the recording here, I'll be sure to include the link to our documentation that actually has another link that goes to the Apple list of everything that iOS 15 has to offer, because there are some big updates. So to get started, we're going to talk about focus and do not disturb. So most of you may be super familiar with do not disturb. Hopefully you use it. I find it super helpful. You can see my iPad's actually on do not disturb right now. You can see up in the top right, I've got the little half moon icon to indicate do not disturb. So with iOS 15, we actually got a new version of do not disturb. Do not disturb, and it is now part of the focus family. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off do not disturb just so you can see what it looks like now. So you access it the same way. You go swipe down from the top right to control center, and you can see focus now. So I'll use my assistive touch here just to show. So it's called focus. And focus is basically a way that you can set up different restrictions, different settings for different parts of your day. So do not disturb is the one that most people are pretty familiar with, but they've got other ones by default here: personal, sleep, work, etc. So you can really customize and change. You want to allow notifications from this app or that app, but not for other ones, maybe for work. Maybe you want just your work emails to come through during work hours. Or alternatively, maybe you want just your personal emails to come through during, after 5 o'clock, that kind of a thing. So focus allows you to customize different things. And you can do this. You can set up focus by going into your settings. And then over here on the left, there's focus. So that's focus. Like I said, there's more information on all of this stuff that I'm covering, as well as other items on our documentation site. So don't feel like you got to absorb all of it right now. The other thing that, one of the other pieces that was updated that is super helpful is multitasking. So many of you that went through 1.0 and even 2.0 with us, I know folks had a lot of problems sometimes getting multitasking set up. And by multitasking, I'm talking about the side-by-side, the split view, or slide over. So in iOS 15, there's actually the creation of a little multitasking taskbar, if you will, and it's up here in the top. I'll use my assistive touch again to show you. It's right here, those 3 dots. And basically what this does is allow you to set up slide over or split view. So I think that's super helpful for me. It's helpful because I could do split view and slide over fairly well, but I think it's helpful now because you can actually see when you open an app that you can actually put it into split view or into slide over. For the most part, you can do that with most apps, but sometimes there's some very few that you just can't do. So that's another one that's super helpful.
Emma?
Yeah, and
I don't know the difference between slide over and split view. Can you just tell me briefly what that means?
Absolutely. I can demonstrate it for you. So I've got Safari open right here. I'm going to click on my multitasking little toolbar there, and I'm going to do split view first. So split view is that middle option, and split view basically puts 2 screens side by side. So I'm going to open Notability. So split view is like this. And I will say too, the other thing that's nice about having this toolbar is previously you would have to like choose an app just from your dock if you wanted to set up split view. So this allows you to really open up anything.
So you can
So
open
that's
it from anywhere on your iPad, basically.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's split view. And then to close it, you just drag this middle bar over and it closes. And then I'm going to go into slide over. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I've got Safari over here, and I'm going to open Notability. So whatever app is on top, the one that you're starting with, it actually makes it a little spot that basically is on top of the other item. And I just actually moved it over so it's split view. And now it's slide over. So it's just a small little like on top of the existing app. I don't use this all that often. I use split view way more, but still helpful to know. Okay.
Can I ask an unrelated question? Can you split view and use the same app, like be in Notability and have two different Notability windows?
Yep. So if you do the same thing, so if I'll do it this way. So if I create a new note, and then if you gently swipe from the right to open the note switcher, you can find a new note that you want. If you tap and hold on it, you can open your notes side by side.
Oh, so that's just staying within Notability then. That's not using split screen. Okay.
Nope, this has its own, has its own view. Yeah, no problem. All right, so we'll move on to the home screen. So again, home screen changed, and this is the one that I think most folks kind of recognize from their iPhone if they have an iPhone, because iPhone's actually updated to this kind of home screen view. I think it was 14, maybe even 13, but sometime in the last couple of updates. So you can see I've got widgets here. You can add widgets to any page now. Previously, you could only add widgets on your iPad to the widget view or the today view, when you gently swiped over to get it. Now you can add widgets to any page. So you can do that by tapping and holding on the background until everything starts to shake. Then up in the top left, you can hit the little plus. And from here, you can add widgets basically to any of your items that you've got. So you can look for, like, if you wanted the battery one, you can do that. And sometimes folks forget to usually get a couple different views on each one. So don't forget that you can swipe right to actually get different options of views, because sometimes people will get this one and be like, wait a minute, I want to know, I like having the actual percentage number and not just the green circle. So that's something helpful to note. And obviously you can add all sorts of widgets, depends on the apps you have installed, whether or not they have widgets. And then similarly, you can move stuff around. So I can move this clock to the second page. And then you just tap on the background once you're done, and it'll basically save everything for you. Something else that I actually have to do on my iPad, but I would recommend, is sometimes folks will actually set up different pages of their iPad for different things. So maybe your home page is truly all your essential things, weather, calendars, etc. But then maybe your second page is apps you want to try. And then maybe your third page is your work apps, just apps you need for work. And just really thinking about how to customize it to best utilize it for you. I do this more on my phone. I need to set it up on my iPad, but I think it kind of goes along with the focus tool, and basically thinking about, like, you can use your iPad in many different ways and in many different parts of your life. All right, so we'll briefly talk through a couple more things here. So Safari is another thing that updated. So you can actually visually see my Safari may look a little different than yours. You can actually set a background on Safari now, and you can do that by just opening Safari. And if you open it and there's just a page, so if you open and let's say, it looks like this, you just use the plus icon up in the top right, and then swipe down to edit. And you can make some customizations in terms of what shows up on this start page. So also within Safari, there's some updates in terms of the way that tabs look. So tabs might look a little different, and that's specifically where it says My Campus Secure Login and Start Page. Those look a little different. Functionality is pretty much the same. The big thing with Safari and kind of across the entire iPad is that there were a lot of changes with privacy and privacy settings. So you can see here from this start page the privacy report is actually telling me information about how I've been using, how I should say other websites might be trying to use my information. So if I click on that, it gives me an actual privacy report that tells me information about advertisers and other potential websites trying to get my information. So it's a big kind of theme that Apple is taking on. Likely if you're following anything in the news, this probably isn't new to you to hear about, but I like to mention that. And then last in kind of the general overview, there was a couple accessibility changes. So some of the bigger ones, and I'm just going to go into my accessibility settings. Some of the bigger ones are that you can now customize per app settings. So if there's an app that the contrast is really troublesome, or you find the text is too small, you can customize those things. So you go into accessibility, scroll all the way to the bottom and go to per app settings. And you can add an app here, but I'm also just I'm gonna click right on App Store just to show you. So these are the options you get. So like I was saying, if the text is too small for that app, but everywhere else it's fine, you could actually go in here and make the text larger. If you have issues with the buttons, all sorts of stuff you can do right within here for any app. And just for that app alone. Previously, you would have to make a change and it would apply to everything. So that's one of the ones. And then the other one that I find is actually going to be really helpful. I personally have already used it and I'm going to continue to use it, is actually background sounds. So it's under the audio and visual section in your accessibility settings, background sounds, and then you have to turn it on. And I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear it of the way that I've got this set up, but right now the ocean is playing. And this is a really cool thing. Yeah, I'm going to turn it off because it's kind of loud. There we go. Kind of loud and hard to talk over. But it's a really cool thing to think about, like encouraging your students if they have trouble focusing, or if they're getting, very frustrated, just in a situation where they need to calm down, point this out to them. There are plenty of folks that I know that actually will turn on a similar app or a similar tool to play background sounds while they fall asleep. Like you can go, with your Alexa or your Google or whatever, say background, play the sound of the ocean and fall asleep to that. So that's a really cool one that I think helps to point out too, that accessibility settings aren't necessarily always for someone with a documented accessibility concern or issue to be addressed. It can be for anyone. We can really customize our iPad using the accessibility tools. And then I'll briefly just mention Keynote, Pages, Numbers. The Apple suite of productivity did get an update as well. I'd say the biggest changes in Keynote. So in Keynote, there are a bunch of new things. You can insert a live video feed into your presentation. So if you are presenting up at the front of the class and maybe you've got a demonstration that you want to do, something that's right up there, but you've got your students, especially considering COVID and social distancing, they're way in the back of the class, they can't see it as well. You could turn your camera on and actually show them what you're doing right up at the front of the class. And it goes right alongside with any of your slide content. So that's a really cool tool that they've just released. They've also just released Keynote Live. And we're still doing some testing on this, but basically it allows you to share your slides with viewers remotely or in person. So it's kind of like thinking if you've done like a GoToWebinar kind of thing where it feels like, or even a Zoom webinar, kind of feels like that, but without the participant view. So really you're just looking at slides. I haven't honestly found a whole lot of use for this, except for one case where if you wanted your students in the classroom to all be looking at the same thing. Because this has come up a couple different times where folks have said, okay, well, how do I get what I'm showing on my iPad on my student's iPad? Like so that we can all look at the same thing together. That would be the really good use case for it. Again, it's only within Keynote though. So, and oftentimes I'll find like people want to look at a book or look at something very specific, real time, everyone's looking at the same thing. So just something to keep in mind. Then within Pages, there are some minor tweaks to the book publishing features. We're going to talk more about Pages and book publishing probably in the spring. So if you have any questions about that, reach out, but that's coming. And then Numbers. The big thing with Numbers is that pivot tables are now able to be created and edited on the iPad. So that's a big change. I know a lot of folks are really excited about that. And I'm happy to meet or chat with anyone who has questions about that fairly straightforward, but happy to chat and walk through it with anyone. All right, I'm going to take a breath. That was the big updates in iOS 15. And like I said, in the recording here, I'll include the link to our documentation, which obviously also has a link to Apple's kind of overview of the software, and you can learn more. But any questions?